The return to Rooks Hall. I did not want to come here. I have no plainer way of expressing my reluctance, my dread at the prospect of being transported back to this place. The mere thought of this monstrous grey-bricked, soulless, yet somehow possessed, sinister building, causes my mind untold suffering. My constitution is affected to the degree of nausea and sweating, and a pounding in my heart and brain. I was without thought but one. I must never come back to this place. My first episode of fear and anxiety had been activated by the receipt of a note. I had opened its pale white envelope with trepidation and examined the message closely. The paper had been heavy bonded and thick with visible ridges, expensive in its production. The words were written in a light blue ink, in a very flowery hand. The tails of the letters showed a flourish and character. The message was addressed to Jonathan Meeks, but the identity of its author was not determinable. It was to all intents and purposes a wholly anonymous communication. But there was no confusion in the message it contained. There could be no misunderstanding. This place wanted me back. I am unable to explain exactly the sensation of dread this place causes in me or its origin, except to say that when in its proximity the house seems to exude an atmosphere of evil. Some ungodly force surrounds this residence and manifests itself in an unquantifiable sensation, coupled with a barely audible, high-pitched screeching, like a locomotive braking on steel tracks. My nerves become tormented, my skin prickly, my hands frantic in their scratching about my arms and neck and face, my breathing laboured, forcing me to my knees. It was my firm resolution never to live again within these walls once I had consent to leave. As far as my acquaintances, associates and colleagues were concerned, my life did not begin until after I departed this place. Any details of my time before that joyous day were buried deep in the dark recesses of history. I had been robbed of my childhood, my physical health, my mind, even my own identity. My future well-being depended on remaining far from this place. A good many years it had taken to recover my mind, nerve and composure, and to return to normality or some semblance of it. A charitable foundation had sponsored my education and I found myself through luck and hard work, a partner of an established law firm. Yet now I was to be called back here, to this place of dread, terror and fear. The note had awakened in my mind terrible memories of the past, the noises, the smells, the sensations of my torment. Even casting my eyes upon the paper had caused me distress. The house calls you. Return at once. Only through repentance can salvation be granted. Why now? This was the prime question I had in my mind. Why would the house want me back after all these years full of vibrant life and productive existence? My mind had been restored and surely my redemption could be gained by good deed and pious existence. But the note rebuked this notion. The note commanded, taunted and mocked me. Why now? Unable to sleep that first night, my mind was awash with thoughts. I excused myself from my workplace the next morning, so tired and distressed was I by the feelings of dread the note had solicited from me. Unable to compose myself, I suffered another sleepless night. The note remained on my bedside cabinet, mocking me, accusing me, the high-pitched whine of the house ringing in my ears. I screamed for it to stop, but it would not cease. It was during that second troubled night that I began to write a journal. An attempt to exorcise the thoughts, doubts and fears that raced in my head, an effort to stave off the madness. This ancient house of Rooks Hall was always steeped in myth, legend and mystery. Many knew the tales that were told of the place and the orphanage that was founded here many years ago. Yet few know the full extent of the history of suffering this place owns. Few can contemplate or even begin to grasp the depth of its evil, the power of its force. How many wretched beings have lived within these walls, suffered, perished? How many tormented souls haunt the place? Where does this evil come from? What is the source? Why does it want me back? Am I part of the evil, or am I merely an agent of the wickedness? I have never spoken of these things to any living soul. Nobody of close acquaintance to me has knowledge of my past, of my illness, of my madness. Nobody knows of what happened in the grounds of this evil place. It was, until the receipt of the note, my firm belief that those days were behind me. For many a year those dark, Terror-filled days seemed like a lifetime ago, an eon away, a different era altogether. Yet on some nights, seeming to come out of the blue, out of the deepest recesses of my consciousness, the dreams would come, transporting me back to the house. My nostrils filled with the familiar odor, the musty, sterile, nauseating odor. The odor of damp, of cold stone, rotting timber, mold and decay. My ears filled with the screeching, the sound stabbing at my brain, and I would spring awake, perspiring, shivering in frightened terror, and only then would the fear release its grip from my throat. But the house had wanted me back. It had brought me back. It had called me, drawn me with some strange, dark, irresistible force, against my will, against all reason. I was compelled by some indescribable unseen, mysterious power. On this, the third morning after the arrival of the note, I rose and dressed nervously and feebly. Upon examining my reflection in my dressing mirror, I observed a quite marked and rapid deterioration in my appearance. Now cadaverously pale of complexion, my eyes were diminished in colour and bloodshot, lips somewhat thinner than before and devoid of shade. My cheeks were sunken slightly, the cheekbones now more prominent and my hair softer and noticeably thinner. About the temple, a distended vein throbbed visibly, blue beneath the pale flesh. My reflection did not resemble the image I had admired just days beforehand, before the arrival of the note. So much of a change, in fact, that I doubted for a second the reflection was my own. I indeed was drawn to feel that the reflection owned me rather than the opposite. There was but one course of action open to me now. Once dressed, I took to my carriage and began the journey to Rooks Hall with great reluctance and foreboding. The morning was bleak and sunless with a fair wind and a fine, warm rain that has continued unabated. The countryside seemed to get darker and bleaker the further I travelled from my lodgings, the nearer I drew to this cursed place. As the journey proceeded, I began to feel the madness creeping up on me, returning, gaining control once more, by degree. The treatment with laudanum had helped alleviate the symptoms of my illness, but had it ever completely cured it? Or just suppressed it enough to allow my mind to function? Had the madness been locked away in some subconscious limbo, awaiting its chance to return and seize control of my body once more? Driving the horses through the open gates of the grounds and along the extensive driveway, the devilish spectre of Rooks Hall loomed in the distance, filling me with despair and dread. The horses began to slow as we approached, the high-pitched whine now audible, then they halted and reared up, nearly upturning the carriage. I did my best to settle them and then untethered them from the carriage and let them trot away to a more bearable distance. My heart wished the same option were available to me. My skin was beginning to itch. As I made my reluctant approach to the main doors, the whine increased in volume. The old building looked just as grey as it had all those years before when I was trapped within its walls. Clearly uninhabited now, the main doors were half open like a shallow frown. As I crossed the threshold and stepped into the hall, trembling, the light cascaded into the ancient hallway, illuminating the great room. All was still, save for the dust particles that hung in the air, revealed by the light from their prolonged slumber in the darkness. All was silent, except for the slow, rhythmic ticking of the large clock that stood ominously at the far end of the great hall. Tick, tock, tick, tock. My eyes fixed on the clock, its round face, static hands, and its oak cabinet reverberating with the ticking. Time marching, unstoppable. Tick, tock, tick, tock. It was as if I were looking down a dark tunnel. All light in my periphery vision had vanished. All that remained, all that dominated my sight was the menacing towering clock and the eerie, unsettling ticking. Tick, tock, tick, tock. Each tick was like a needle to my brain, a stabbing, irksome, maddening malady of my senses. The itching returned to my body and struck me down like a thunderbolt from the gods, my hands crawling over my body, unable to relieve the intense irritation. I staggered to my feet, urged on by some force, compelled to advance within the house. Approaching the large thick-beamed staircase, I froze at the base of its steps. There on the balcony was Beaufort, blonde hair, laughing, laughing, laughing as he always did before his death, before his body was broken by the fall. Broken by the fall from the balcony, pushed, yes, pushed by me. I turned my head, the laughter still ringing in my ears. I turned back, and the boy was gone. Yet the laughter remained. It echoed from the bowels of the house. Slowly, against all will and reason, I ascended the stairs, my legs moving without my consent. As I reached the dormitory I paused beside the door, hand resting on the handle, resisting. But the house commanded, and I obeyed. I entered to see the bare room, walls covered with mold and flaking plaster. Then the images flashed, the bodies, the faces of the slain looked at me with unnerving accusation. The children, bodies twisted, disordered, the abbess, bloodied and bowed. Still the laughter, mixed with the wine and the creak, the itching and the pounding of heart and head. I could remain no more and fled the room, rushing down the hall and the stairs and past the ticking clock and bursting through the doors into what was now bright sunshine. Gathering my breath for an instant, I paused before hearing the call of the lake. The wine had returned, paining my ears and brain. I approached as if in a trance as the blue waters of the lake shimmered like a sea of diamonds. Ballast stood, by the shores of the lake, paddling in the water, just as he did the day he drowned. Held headfirst under the gloomy water by my hands. He smiled and waved and then was gone. Broken, disoriented, and paralyzed of will, I sit by the shores of the lake. I search in my waistcoat pocket and I retrieve the message. I hold it to view and examine it once more. It is blank, the words gone. Those flowery, delicately crafted characters gone. Had they ever existed? Sudden clarity of mind descends on me and I now know why the house has called me. Why I have returned to Rooks Hall. I reach for my journal book, this journal book you hold in your hands, and allow my pencil to exorcise the evil in this place, the evil in me. I hope that this testament will go some way to explain the grounds for my actions, for I do not seek forgiveness or redemption. I know I am beyond the prospect now. I believe myself not evil, but an agent of evil. And if this house itself is not evil, it too is an agent of it. I have seen many terrible things in my short, tormented years, and the undoubted source of those evils I have witnessed and facilitated, is this house. I wish the house unmade, wish that it had never existed. I wish to see every stone removed from its walls and scattered to the ends of the earth. Yet the house lives on, breathes new evil with every new dawn. No fire has ever destroyed it, nor ever could. The house will live forever. So my only achievable course of action is to wish myself unmade. To remove my tortured soul from the power of the evil force of this house, and to attempt to find peace and forgiveness in the eternal afterlife of heaven, or to burn in the eternal suffering of hell. For to remain on this earth, a murderous medium for wickedness is offence to nature. I pray that whosoever finds this journal shall understand my motive and explain my intentions to others. And in finality, I ask but one thing, that my body, once discovered, be removed from the lake and given a Christian burial in accordance with the teachings of Jesus Christ, whose forgiveness is all I seek. Jonathan Meeks, April the 12th, 1827.